Good evening and welcome to Freedom is a Constant Struggle with your host Kilu Nyasha here on SF Live and engineered by Arnell Valle. Tonight we're going to have a special guest by phone calling in, Richard Brown of the San Francisco 8, and he should be calling in about 10 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to share with you first a commentary by Mumia Abu Jamal titled A Hollow Victory, followed by comments from yours truly. As millions ready themselves for the general elections in November, it takes some effort to summon up the elections of 2 years ago. In 2006, midterm elections brought dramatic change to the Congress and seemed to presage a change in the nation's direction as well. Those midterms centered around the public's demand and hunger for an end to the Iraq War and illegal occupation, and was an electoral expression of that deep national discontent. Well, it's been 2 years now, and the Congress has just voted another $165 billion to fund the Iraq War. It's been 2 years, and the Iraq mess is still a scar on the national psyche. It's now become the property of both major political parties, Democrats and Republicans. It's the very nature of politics that politicians regularly betray the interests of those who have voted for them. They'll take the votes, yes, but they don't answer to the people. As the saying goes, they answer to a higher power, the military-industrial complex. If we think back to the primaries, candidates of both parties who ran on genuine anti-war platforms had to contend with waves of media ridicule. Think about how the corporate media treated either Dennis Kucinich, Ron Paul, or former Congressman Mike Gravel. All were depicted as little better than boobs, objects of an occasional sidebar, but never seriously presented as candidates of presidential timber. The media hired guns for their corporate bosses, served their interest by coverage which slanted the perceptions of millions that only those they thought electable were serious candidates. Only so-and-so can raise enough money, most reporters opined, selling candidates as surely as they sold soap. These processes have produced the very hour we now live in, a time of peril and disaster. What kind of democracy can such a process engender? And now, half year from another election, we will hear a plethora of promises, spun with the best commercials that money can buy. We will march into the booth, our eyes shiny with anticipation, and in a matter of months or years, we will look back at the ashes of promises aborted and wonder how we keep doing it again and again and again. And that was Mumia Abu Jamal, live from Death Row, and that was written in June. And written today from yours truly. It's just been announced that the unemployment rate rose to 6.1% as employers cut payrolls for the 8th month in a row. A total of 101,000 private jobs were lost in August, another 60,000 cut in July, and 100,000 jobs were slashed in June. Some 260,000 layoffs this summer. Housing-related factories, construction, and automakers are among the hardest hit, and economists predict still more losses in the coming months. There are now some 10 million unemployed workers, and that figure only represents those receiving unemployment insurance, while tens of millions of ordinary people are suffering from greatly reduced incomes at a time of rising prices for the basic necessities. Politicians are raising and spending astronomical sums of money, enriching the rich. Common Cause reports, quote, the most expensive election cycle in history is nearing its peak. Candidates will raise and spend an anticipated $5 billion. $5 billion around the country by November, with money raised mostly from wealthy individuals and interest groups. No event rivals the National Party conventions, however, for enabling those with deep pockets to purchase access to prominent political leaders, unquote. In 8 days of virtual nonstop partying, let 'em eat cake, the two conventions spent untold millions on lavish receptions and parties. This is largely due to two glaring campaign finance loopholes. The host committees can accept unlimited corporate and union contributions. These 6- and 7-figure gifts buy access to the politicians and are yet another clear indication of the corruption of our political system. AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon are all among the top host committee donors, and all three are heavily invested in the internet neutrality debates in Congress coming up in 2009. AT&T's lobbying budget of some $50 million reveals a sharp focus on the FISA bill, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that included legal immunity for the telecommunications companies that participated in warrantless wiretapping on behalf of the U.S. government, an amendment that likely saved AT&T and others enormous court fees. As if that weren't bad enough, taxpayers were forced to spend $100 million on so-called security for brutal police overkill. That's $50 million for each convention. The cost of this presidential race is upwards of $5 billion. The estimated total for the 2004 campaign was $3 billion, which was 40% greater than the previous 1996 campaign, which was 40% more than that of '92. At least $115 million was spent for each convention in 2004, not counting the martial law repression called security and all the lavish parties. Since both candidates are determined to stay the course of this imperial war, our sons and daughters will continue to pay the price for the profiteering of Halliburton, Bechtel, Blackwater, and countless other contractors making billions, or is it trillions, of dollars from death and destruction in what will surely be a quagmire for many years to come if we don't move fast to stop it. In George Jackson's words, quote, "When any election is held, it will fortify rather than destroy the credibility of the power brokers. When we participate in this election to win instead of disrupt, we're lending to its credibility and destroying our own." He also noted, quote, "This is a huge nation dominated by the most reactionary and violent ruling class in the history of the world, where the majority of the people just simply cannot understand that they are existing on the misery and discomfort of the world," unquote. There are currently some 750 U.S. military bases worldwide, and U.S. forces just invaded Pakistan. In closing, I especially like George Jackson's definition of freedom. Freedom means warmth and protection against harsh exposure to the elements. It means food, not garbage. It means truth, harmony, and social relations that spring from these. It means the best medical attention whenever it's needed. It means employment that is reasonable, that coincides with the individual necessities and feelings. We will have this freedom even at the cost of total war. And we should be hearing shortly from Richard Brown, who will be bringing us news and information about the San Francisco 8 brothers who were elders who have been arrested and caught up in a cold case of the murder of a police officer 37 years ago in 1971 in San Francisco. Their lives have been completely disrupted. Two of the prisoners, Herman Bell and Jalil Muntakim have been imprisoned for 34 and 37 years on another case, which they still maintain they didn't was a crime they did not commit. However, they are locked in solitary confinement in the county jails and have been since January of 2007. The 6 other brothers were all released on bail. We managed to raise the bail for them, and one of them, Richard Neal, has had all of the charges dropped. We are now waiting for a call from Richard Brown. It should be coming through shortly. And Richard Brown, as many of you know, has lived and worked in San Francisco all his life. He's known as, we call him the mayor. He worked for 20 years for the Ella Hill Hutch Community Center and has been a tireless advocate for young black men especially, and our youth particularly. And he has been a mentor and an advocate for their rights, as well as a protector of their interests. So I hope that we will hear from Richard shortly. He should be calling in any minute now. So let's see. I'll open the live line just in case. It's 621-4473. 621-4473. And do we have a call now? Is it coming through? Oh, good. I'm saved. Richard, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Hi, Richard. Welcome to Freedom.
Hi. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And Richard, would you first tell our viewers a little bit about yourself? I've described you somewhat and told about your political activities and how you spent 20 years working for Ella Hill Hutch Community Center. Can you give us a little more information?
Well, yeah, that's in my community activist part, working for Ella Hill Hutch and for a San Francisco Coalition, actually, before that, for about 10 years. But before that, I was also actually San Francisco Panther, which is where I picked up all of the skills and all of the ambition and the things to try to serve the community and the people in the community, where I got more or less my principles and my desire to help people from. And because of that, I've been persecuted for the last 30 or 40 years. So,
yes, Black Panthers were certainly targeted by the FBI's counterintelligence program.
Correct.
Yes. Will you describe the current case of the San Francisco 8 to our viewers and how that, I had already mentioned the incident that brought about the case. Would you elaborate, please?
Yeah, well, in 1971, the Hillside Police Station was attacked and a police officer was killed. And in 1973, tortured some brothers in New Orleans and police officers from all over, or detectives from all over the United States, from New York, Texas, Louisiana, and California, ascended in New Orleans and I made the brothers, 3 of them, confess to just about every crime committed in the United States. Because of the torture, they did confess to say that they did all those things. It was a couple of San Francisco police homicide detectives, Frank McCoy and Ed Erdelatz, who were actually orchestrating the whole thing, and the local New Orleans police were the ones who were actually doing the torturing. And these detectives would just come in and out and ask questions, and if they didn't cooperate, they would leave the room. And the local goons would take over and continue doing whatever it is that they were doing. Everything from the water treatments to beatings to electrical prods to, they just did the whole gamut as far as torture is concerned for several days. And the brothers, after about 3 or 4 days, John Bowman, Harold Taylor, and who happens to be here with me tonight, actually, and Reuben Scott, they they confessed to a bunch of things, everything that they put in front of them. But once they got to court, they told the judge what had happened, and the judge investigated. After an investigation, and the fact that they were denied an attorney for 5 days, and the fact that they had been tortured, the judge threw out the confessions. So this is what actually last year, the San Francisco Police Department, the same people who were brought out of retirement, Ed Erdelatz and Frank McCoy, who are now part of the Homeland Security, who were part of, they were homicide detectives back in San Francisco at that time in the 70s. But now they've reopened the case, and they've charged 8 of us with the crime based upon the so-called confessions that were obtained through torture. And they feel that with the advent of the Patriot Act, some of the things that were illegal back then are now legal. So this is where we are. We go to court Monday. We ask some people to, well, actually, we may not be there long this Monday, but we do have a court date on the 8th, and at 9 o'clock in Department 24 for those who are interested and who would like to come out and support us. But this is where we are at this time.
Right, and talk a little bit about the conditions, the jail conditions under which Herman and Jaleel are being held. Richard, you were there for a number of months yourself. They're in what they call administrative segregation, ADSEG, as they dub it. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, just being locked up, you're being denied freedom, and you're being denied access to your family and to the community and that type of thing. It wasn't, I have to honestly and truly say that we weren't treated bad in any type of way. They've changed a lot at 850 Bryant. They seem to have people who are more professionals and do their job in a more professional manner. It's not like it used to be in the old days where it was just straight up racism and racist cops just beating, brutalizing minorities, particularly blacks. But the fact that our rights were being violated for being locked up for no reason and because we're innocent, period, that was the main objection that we had for being there, So
yes,
we are out on bail, and except for Herman and Jaleel, who we have to be able to get out because they've been they're what I would call troops. They're the ones who are really suffering behind this. Those same so-called confessions that were thrown out in New Orleans and were thrown out in L.A. and will be thrown out in San Francisco against us. In New York, when they charged Herman and Jaleel with the crime, when they weren't allowed to use those so-called confessions, they had a hung jury. The next judge allowed the confessions to be used, and those brothers were convicted based upon some confessions that were obtained through torture, and they've been locked up for 37 years, and that's a true crime against humanity, and we're doing everything we can to try to get them out.
Absolutely. And talk a little bit about Jerry Brown's role in all of this.
Jerry Brown, actually, we don't know, dear. He's the one. The indictment came out of the Attorney General's office. We have reason to believe that he was he was misled into believing, which is what everybody was told, that they had new evidence, they had new fingerprints, they had new DNA, they had new witnesses, and they had a strong case, which turned out not to be the case at all. They don't have. They do have new DNA. It just doesn't match any of us, and they have fingerprints that they don't match any of us. The witnesses are, they can only say that they knew us from that time. There's nobody that actually, from what I know, that is going to say that we did anything. So, we don't know if he was, what the reason was that the Attorney General went along with that. We know that the FBI didn't take it, and we know that the San Francisco DA's office didn't take it. So
to her credit,
yeah,
yes,
to the Attorney General's office, and for some reason he signed the warrant, and they came and picked us up. So.
Right. And I just I wanted you to talk a little bit about the fact that Jaleel and Herman are due for parole after 34 and 37 years in prison, and the judge, Judge Moscone, had was going to have gave the green light for them to be returned to New York, and that's been held up. We have about a minute left. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You know, this is also another crime that's being committed at this time. The state seems to be dragging their feet now. The judge has indicated that, and rightfully so, that they have a right to go before the board, which they're eligible for now, and he signed the order for them to be released. The state is saying that they didn't think that they could be back in time for September the 8th, but now that it looks like that's going to be put off, so we're hoping that they will be able to be transferred back to New York so they can go before the board in order to be, for their case to be heard. And it is possible that both of them can be released at this particular time.
Right. And hopefully they will be. Thank you so much, Richard Brown, for joining us here on Freedom is a Constant Struggle. And we will make sure that we will get as many people into court to pack the courtroom on Monday, September 8th at 9 a.m., third floor, 850 Bryant Street. And I want to thank our viewers for watching. And I'm Kilu Nyasha for San Francisco Live. And my board op, I want to thank Arnel Valle for board opping. And be sure and tune in next week to Freedom for a special presentation concerning Attica with Sheba Haven, former Panther sister. Good night and power to the people.
All right. Bye-bye.